So car park catch up is not in the car park, as I think you can see, but I've got the rare opportunity of having the office to myself for a little bit. So I thought I'd jump on, and it is a few days into February. I said last month we would do these updates monthly and just see where we are in the market and give you a few kind of headlines, give you a few ideas of what the market's doing, and just try and cut through some of the doom and gloom and the catastrophizing that you get in the media. Because one of the biggest questions I'm being asked at the moment is it a good time to sell? Should we be buying? People are worried about interest rates. They're worried about house prices dropping. So I just wanted to cut through a few of the facts. Now, firstly, we'll give you the same headline that we're going to give you every month, and we're going to be looking at Rightmove and how many properties are reducing, and then how many properties are staying on the market and the average time in which they're on the market. Now, before I give these figures, and they will come up shortly, I think it's important, I mentioned it last month, that any figures have to be taken in context. So only as we go along and do these will we really see a pattern form. So anything going up or down doesn't really necessarily mean house prices are drastic or properties are taking longer to sell. It's just gives us a sound bite to look at in coming months. Okay, so if we look at last month's figures, this is what we saw. That in the last 7 days before I'd done the video, there was 15 price reductions. Now, we have to bear in mind that when I did the previous one, that was when we first came into 2023. It was January, so there was going to be a lot of people, new year, new start, think, right, we're going to reduce our price. So I would have been extremely concerned if we'd seen massive of increase on that, and we'll come on to what it is now, 7 days before this video. But also if we look at the number of properties that had been marketed for over 12 weeks, last month that was currently sitting at 309. Okay, so I'm going to put up on the screen now. This is where we are. Okay, so looking at the reductions, first of all, there hasn't been a great deal of change. Okay, in fact, that has stayed the same. I would have expected it to go down if things were staying the same, because like I say, we had that post-New Year rush at the beginning of last month. So the fact that there's still been 15 price reductions still says that people are monitoring their prices, keep an eye on what's happening, and ultimately that's what you've got. If that's your tool, that's one of your biggest tools to get interest going on your property. Some of it can be down to, we've recently changed the way we market a few properties, so we've encouraged people to come away from fixed price and look at guide prices. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're changing what they actually want for the property. They're just changing the way they put it out there to buyers, and that will have an effect on those figures. So again, over the next few months we can monitor that. The number of properties being marketed has increased, which is now at 333. Again, not massive. The average time last month was 235 days. It's now 251. And I think with all the bad news, the doom and gloom, it was always bound to happen. I saw an example the other day of what I mean when I talk about catastrophizing. Obviously, I'm sure, unless you've not seen any headlines, we know that the interest rates recently rose. And that kind of sent a little bit of a tremor across people. It was like, oh my God, it's still, we had all this at the end of last year, it's still happening now. But when you read the articles, the truth was it was a precautionary measure just to ensure that inflation was coming down. And it is predicted that any recession that we have, if we do go into one, will not be as severe as they first thought. And that to me was a breath of fresh air. There was a little bit of good news there. However, that doesn't necessarily make headlines. It doesn't get clicks online or sell newspapers. Showing my age now. So I say we can only talk about what we see, and at the moment we're seeing a steady market. Properties are not flying out the door. I'd be treating you for idiots if I said they were. However, if the marketing is right, if the pricing is right, then we are selling. And you'll see on our feeds, only today we've sold property in Lilac Avenue. Over the last few days, we've had quite a few sales going through, and a lot of people moving as well. It's been really nice beginning of the year, seeing so many people move into their new home. So is it a good time to buy? Okay, now I've always said that people get too hung up sometimes on house prices, because and what they don't take into account is their own personal circumstances. If it is a good time for you to buy, your career, your life, your personal life, it's a good time for you, then you do it. Okay. Now, obviously, if people are worried that they're going to buy a property, house prices are going to come crashing down, and then they're going to lose loads of money. And obviously, when I came into this job in the late 80s, there were people in negative equity because their mortgages were higher than the value of their property. And of course, that is a genuine fear for people. However, I think one of the things I want to look at is what prices have done since I've done this job. And when I very first started, the average house price in the southeast was at the time £25,000, and now we're looking at prices of £350 and upwards for the southeast. So it's a massive change. So had someone at the beginning of that time fallen into trouble and they were in negative equity, yes, it would mean that they wouldn't be able to sell. However, it would mean that eventually they would come out of it again. And I think that's the bit that sometimes gets missed. So for me, the message is it's all about time. Yeah, if you are going to buy a property now and you're thinking, well, look, I'll tell you what, I'm going to rent it for a year, or it'll be a stopgap, and I'll be in it for a year or two, and then I'll move on to my next one, that could be quite a risky process, okay, or a risky strategy to take, because if prices do come down and interest rates go up anymore, because let's be honest, we don't, everyone's predicting something different, then that could in the short term cause you a lot of pain. However, if you buy a property now and you think, well, actually, if there's a little bit of an interest rate, I'm comfortable, I can still do it, we can still move on, and you're planning to keep that property for more than just the first couple of years, so let's say for argument's sake 5 years plus, then your risk is much lower, and the chances are you won't lose out. I mean, I've always said that I think when we talk about house prices crashing and all these very devastating words that give it a really wrong impression of what's actually happening in the market, it makes it sound like, 1 minute house price is going to be 350,000, next minute they're going to be 100,000, and we've never ever seen drops of those kind of levels. Over the years, the graph has kind of gone up and up and up, and then it's dipped a little bit, then it goes up and up and up, and then it dips a little bit more, and that's the most what we'd expect. So if you're going to be selling in 5 to 7 years, so you should be okay. I mean, obviously no one's got a crystal ball, and I can only talk from experience, but it is all about time. And the longer you intend to stay in that property, the more you are minimising the risk to yourself. So don't mortgage yourself to the hill. Don't go and buy a property that you can't afford if mortgages go up slightly. But having said that, also don't go so cheaply that you're going to be in a property you're not happy with for in a couple of years' time because your family's growing, things like that, and take these things into account. So certainly buy. Now is the time, and if prices do come down and you're going to be in there for a while, you're going to be okay. All right, now I hope that makes sense. I'm not noticing the time, I'm taking a little bit longer than I normally do on these, but I think it's important to cut through and think, look, buying a property is an exciting time, and it can be really worrying when you see all this doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It just have to be sensible in the decisions that we make. Okay, so we'll look at these figures again next month and see what difference they've made.